long. So actually the whole recorded process took 5 hours, but it's actually a lot more than 5 hours because in between there's breaks and there's also like redos and there's also like thinking process on what needs to be added, what needs to be removed. So as of right now, what's shown in the video is the creation of this pine cone, which is the symbol of Agartha. It's just an image that I really resonate with, and like it has like this pear-shaped concept, and with an eye in the center, like the all-seeing eye in the center. So this is the process of creating the pine cone with Blender with the array modifier, which is my favorite modifier of all time. If I can frame it in a poster, I will frame the array modifier. But basically, what's shown in the array modifier, let me just go back a little bit, is that you really just like create this one piece of flower petal, and then you apply the array modifier to repeat it, and you apply the curve to basically shape it to the way you want while it's being repeated. So in the end, I think it's just like a really, really cool way to create like some more, to create structures resemble sacred geometry with like mathematical formulas. Although Blender is not the best tool for this, there's much better tool like Grasshopper or Houdini, but I just happened to pick up Blender early on because it's one of the only free softwares out there, and it's open source. So like, open source meaning that the source code is open to public, and anyone can like basically make a version of their own Blender and then use it the way they want. So there's a huge community that support the software. I really support the open source software movement. That's why I chose this as a primary tool for development, and it really has like a lot of really great functions that some like paid 3D model software offer. It basically does a lot of things that I really like. I wanted to do, even though I know like it has certain limitations. So I mostly just work around it. So as we see right now, that was the process of creating the pine cone. You basically use the array modifier, and then you like loop it around horizontally and loop it vertically towards a shape. And now we're seeing the process of creating the more details of the structure. Basically, I have the reference of the image at the side at all time to know like what exactly is the look that I'm creating. And this is really, really helpful in creating any 3D models. Basically, if you don't have a reference image, your life is just gonna be 12 times harder, because it's really hard to know for you to know what it eventually looked like. And this current way of creating the store, we're using the skin modifier, which basically all you need to do is just create one line and apply the skin around it. So it's really helpful for iterating like shapes with volume. And I think we're using similar methods to create like the little round windows at the side. And you basically use the same method where you use one like volumeless vertice, and then you apply the skin modifier to give it a volume, and then you can adjust the shape of the volume. It's a lot easier to create assets that way than like if you were to like extrude it with individual pieces. So as we see now, the tempo is kind of like becoming more and more defined, and now we have like the upper centerpiece of the little green pine cone as the eye, and the lotus sitting around it in a really nice way. And then now we're just like getting into the details of these pillars by the side, and then what are the construction, what are the style on top of the pillar. So on top of each pillar, I want there to be like little lotus-looking, beautiful plants. So it's like really inspiring for people to like walk around these areas. Imagine if the temple extends to certain areas, and then you have these really beautiful little red pillars around it. And on each pillar, there's a little flower. It's just like really nice to look at. And the process of creating these flowers is like very similar. You use that array modifier. You basically rotate it at a certain angle at each level, and then duplicate it so like it rotates around itself. As we can see right now, like if you look at the geometry of each flower, it gets quite complex and quite high definition. So this is something that we'll talk more about later on. Like this model is not created to be optimized for games because like if you just look at this one flower and the amount of vertices on top, it's actually like a crazy amount of vertices. That's probably like a few thousands in just like this one tiny detail. And if you're creating a game with a massive world with like grass, with animations, with trees, with people, animals, houses, you can't really afford to have just one little detail with like that many crazy amount of vertices. It's like it's gonna really like drain up your GPU and your CPU, and it's gonna make the game really laggy. So this is one thing that we will talk extensively about later on as we create our asset, is that in creating games, like the major difference comparing creating games to like animations and CG and what you see in beautiful Instagram renders is that there is a limitation in amount of details you can have in every scene, and you really, really have to use your resources wisely. So because this asset is being created as like the album covers, right? So we're only creating as like a render and kind of a style, like a really attractive style guide for the game. That's why I'm not really too worried about optimization. But if we were to use this in a game, that's like another just like few days of work just to optimize it, make it super streamlined. And so right now, because I mentioned this tempo, like we don't want this to just be a tempo. We want this to be like a tempo that also adhere to the principle of regenerative living principle. So want the principle to be adhering to the regenerative living principle. Let's go, English. But so the idea is that like the whole reason, let me just back off a little bit. Yeah, the whole reason that the roof is created in such a tiered way, as you see on the left, is because each tier can have space for growing plants. So we want to utilize all the space we have to grow as many plants as possible. And then the little lantern looking on the side, which is what let me see, I think we saw that earlier, which is what I was creating right here. I was aiming for it to become like kind of hydroponic plant holders. So if you've seen hydroponic plant holders, they're just like this way to grow plants where you like basically loop your water cycle through, and then the water carries nutrients, and then it saves a lot of space and it saves a lot of water because you're looping through the same water to grow plants. So I was thinking, what if like we create a hydroponic plant sculpture, but it also resembles the design of like Asian lantern design, so that it looks like hanging like dripping lanterns, but then they have plants all around. So like that's why the lantern design at the side of the temple is kind of wants to be purposed through that. But as I was making that, I was like, okay, how does hydroponic actually work? So I need to take a pause and actually look at videos on like hydroponic tutorials. How do people grow their at-home hydroponics? And then after seeing that, like kind of like taking that inspiration back to the creative process and then thinking about how to apply that to this design. And I think right now I decided to put that on pause because I found that to be really challenging and work on another aspect of the tempo, which is the eye for the little pine cone. Or I think maybe the order of this video was wrong. I think the eye was made before that. But yeah, this is just another segment of creating details for the tempo. But basically, creating interactive games or assets, it's really like there's a lot of moving pieces, and all of them get tied into this giant ecosystem. So for me, because I think I naturally have some ADHD, I'm very distracted. As a kid, I was a very distracted person. I just couldn't focus on like doing the same thing over and over. So when I found out about game design, it was kind of a blessing where like, oh yeah, maybe I can work on this model for a few hours. And after that, when I get tired, I leave that hanging and then go work on something else. And then after that, when I get tired, I go back to the same thing. So because you have these like kind of like different aspects of the task that you need to finish in order to create the same ecosystem, you get to kind of hop in between different tasks and then just change like the creative brain to do something else. and then come back to like the thing that you left, and then finish your task. So it's kind of like, you know, like cooking, like you're putting all these different seasonings, and then you focus on this aspect, focus on this aspect, and then in the end they combine together to, you know, a good meal. So and yeah, just reading some comments right now. Lotus is your favorite flower? Me too. I love lotus. It's really nice. And the idea of this temple is that it can also be standing on a river, because all these hydroponics, they need to draw water source from. They need to have a water source. So if you imagine, if you have these like beautiful holding lantern looking thing that directly goes into the river with a water filter, of course, and then they draw water on top, and then they fill water into the hydroponic plants, and then all the water just go back to the river pond. Like that would be really, really nice, right? Like that. And then also you're eliminating the need to import water into the hydroponic plant, which actually saves more energy than than you having to pump water from a source into this other place. You know, saves out these saves more energy and time, ideally. Even though like these are all theoretical knowledge, I will never know it until I put it in action. And I'm just gonna skip this part of the video to, okay. Yeah, so this is when the tempo has, you know, more like of a defined shape, where I've moved it to Unity to basically compose it, and wanted to add some plant cover to the top to make it look really like naturally. And this is the time when, this is during when I really didn't want to hand make all the plants, because each plant is like so different looking and so complex. And then I was just looking for existing plant assets on the Unity asset store to see if I can just quickly prototype plants, even though I don't really like, right now I don't really like the look of this result, because I think the tempo, we wanted to go for like a tune shading, kind of Mobius, Miyazaki styled, like minimal, like 2D looking design, while most of the plants that I was able to find were like more detailed and realistic. And then when you match the two styles together, it just didn't look that nice. And so I think eventually I will probably still need to hand make all the plants, which is actually what we're gonna do in later to today's session. So let me see, I think the rest of this video is just the continued creation of this tempo. Now we've dragged it into Unity, and we are kind of like paving the terrain, making the ambient environment for this render, and you know, paving grass, and then choosing like the type of terrain, like, you know, painting trees. All these are super, super fun. I hope we'll get to do some of that live in next session, because like I think Unity terrain is like one of the most and then listening to Jay-Z at during the creation, because you need something to really excite you. I think Unity terrain is one of the most fun and interactive pieces in Unity, where like painting the Unity terrain, it's kind of like you're actually constructing this world. You know, you're deciding how tall the mountains are, and then you're deciding how, like, you know, like where's the tall mountain, where's the river, where do you put rocks, where's the trees. So you feel like a natural designer paving this environment, which is super fun. And in this video, like, I'm just doing a very, very rough job to just kind of like quickly prototype, so it doesn't look the best. I'm not super satisfied with how it looks, and we can delve into more details into how this works later on. Let me see if I can fast forward this. So yeah, I think this we don't have to go through this entire video, because it just has a lot of details into like the like fine details of creating like the little garments into this temple. And you know, like the frames of the window and the trees and stuff. And this is like checking out some assets to see what we can apply. I wanted to find a good like sky kind of gradient asset, and then looking for like some water like ripple shader. So yeah, and this part. Okay, so before we get into this part, so what we were going through is mostly the creation of the tempo, like the cover photo render template for this game. And after I spent a few days creating that, I was like, okay, like now we kind of have the cover photo, even though I haven't finished with rendering because it still needs to add a lot of detail, like texturing, lighting, all that stuff. But I wanted to put that on a pause and start to work on the gaming mechanism because I think that's more important actually to finish for the sake of this residency because we want to see like interactive elements, we want to see houses. So this house, it's like I said, it's super complex and it has a lot of details and it's not the best, it's not the most suitable for creating like a game. So therefore I realized, okay, like now we have this cover image, now maybe it's time to create some more optimized and like game ready assets with the same kind of style. So this is what we're gonna go through real quick after this. So yeah, this is kind of the last part of creating this like more complex looking tempo. And after this, soon enough, we'll get to the part of creating the game asset. So the game asset is actually a lot more small, a lot more simple, but also like we have to put a lot more thought into the optimization, like using the least amount of geometry as we can to create the most amount of visual result. So this is the idea of creating game asset. I didn't have any sketch because I kind of like figured it would just be really simple. It has the same kind of Asian style roof and it's gonna have like some very simple like roof tiles. And same with the array modifier and then the regular array modifier and the curve modifier. And as you see, as I was creating the roof tile, the bottom part of the roof is completely empty, so there is no geometry because if you're not seeing the geometry, you don't really need to have it exist, otherwise it just takes extra space. So all of this are designed to be super, super lightweight and minimal. Even this, so far, I think this tile could still be improved to be like even more minimal, but we don't really want to sacrifice too much of the style, otherwise it might not look as desirable as it can be. So this is the process of creating like a very basic single family home. I wouldn't say it's a single family, it's probably just like one person or two people home. And later on, each of these objects can have its own kind of profile. So let's say one home represents one resident in the village, and one resident can have like X amount of food that they need to eat, X amount of water they need to use every day, X amount of time they can have into dedicating to perfecting the village, and things like that. So this is just a slow process of creating this, adding colors, adding textures, adding colors and adding materials, and then also like making sure all the UV wrapping, which is what you see on the left side of the screen, is like in a place that's already set up. And so UV wrapping is the idea in 3D. Basically, it's how you apply textures to any of the 3D structure that you create. And okay, let me see. There's a question in the comments saying, what is the ultimate limiting factor on rendering the details? Is it the processing power of where it's going to be hosted or something? So yeah, exactly. There's a limiting factor into basically on the platform that you will use to launch your game. The whole reason that most games are PC or Mac games, even mostly PC games, is because the requirement on GPU is usually really, really intense for a lot of the, like the standard kind of PC, like AAA standard games. And because, yeah, like it really depends on the platform that you plan to launch your game on. Like usually a game, if it's launched on as a PC standalone version, it has a lot more processing power because people can have their custom GPU card that's like 2080 or like 3080 now, and then use that to render like an amazing amount of details. Also, but if you do plan to put your game on different platforms like the mobile platform or even the web platform, it's a lot more limiting. So like, I think the tiered rendering capability is PC and Mac on top. I would say PC on top, Mac over here, and mobile, which is like a mobile app, so Android and iOS, and then web. So like this is one of the reasons that I feel like a lot of the metaverses have room to actually improve on its choice of platform, because web space and then browser is just not the most robust in terms of rendering 3D content. That's why when you go see what's that game all the kids play, like for Fortnite, you see the lighting in Fortnite, and then you go see the lighting in, I don't know, crypto voxels, and it's like day and night, because you don't get these really nice bloom, you don't get sun shaft, you don't get like these fancy like shaders and all that stuff. So for this prototype, I really wanted to be like almost mobile friendly. Like, not saying that we might launch this on the App Store, but like not saying that this has to be launched on the App Store, but I want to keep that an option. Like, I don't want this to be a PC only feature, because I do believe that the more platform that you can have people to be accessible at, the more outreach you'll be able to reach people, right? If this is something that people can just play on their phone, then ideally you're actually gonna reach a lot more people than if this were a game to be dedicated to be played on the PC. So yes, and then we can talk more about like just the logic of optimization later, but optimization, it's a whole very complex science in my opinion. That's why a lot of game studios, they have like optimization artists, and then a lot of game developers and then also game asset creators need to be super aware of optimization. And basically the details that you can use in textures, you wouldn't want to use that as a 3D model. So like technically this model is still not the best optimized, because if you can see this detail at the door, like all these shapes, I like 3D modeled it, but ideally you should just be able to paint that as a texture and then as an image, and then apply that onto your model, and that would save like a lot more computing power. Any thoughts on how you might integrate Web3 values, tools, NFT tokens into the game? So I've actually given that a lot of thought. My conflicting feeling is that I want the game to be able to be played by anyone, not just people who are proficient in the Web3 space and all the Web3 tools. So, like, I want it to be something like maybe an open source game where anyone can just download and play. And I also want to bring this like into the existing gaming community. So maybe having this on Steam, so that like existing gamers who love like strategic management game or world building game can really enjoy this as like a very well put together game. But I also do want there to be a Web3 element to it. And I think Web3 element is really good to have a rarity value in virtual assets. So maybe we can do a combination of some sort where like the game itself can be accessible, like the prototyping part can be accessible on Steam or something like that. But then like there can be a map of like eco villages, or like there could be just this one eco village that's like everyone's building. And then to use it as like virtual real estate. So like maybe like people can buy a plot of land on that map and then build their eco village on there through the regular game. But so 2 layers. So you can build your regular game however you want without the Web3 element. But then if you want to have what you create to be put on this map, you have to have the Web3 element where you maybe like have to own a piece of the real estate, the virtual real estate, in order to put what you create on the piece. So similar to like Sandbox, similar to Decentraland, where like you buy an empty plot, but then you create value on top and then make it really nice, make it inspiring, and then other people can see it and learn from it, and also get exposure to you as a designer, to the content you're creating. So that's like something that I'm thinking about, like as of a hybrid, because I slowly start to realize that the Web3 space, it's still so new, and it's still very like it's new, and it's still kind of like secluded, where like if you're in it, you're kind of surrounded by this knowledge. But when you're not in it, you're just like, what's going on, what. So a lot of the game developer community that I was part of are still like not really adopted to the Web3 space. And a lot of the very talented game developers are not like hopping on this train yet. even though like the whole metaverse play to earn space is like really booming, but I still think that the gaming space in Web3 it's still like at its baby stage. So I do feel like creating a game that can kind of have 2 feet in different worlds where you are accepted and you are attractive to the traditional gamers, but you also have the separate part of the Web3 element, and that like people have an option to would be really nice. Although like that's really ideal. I don't really know. I know technically it's possible, but I don't know how that would work legally. Like, are you allowed to have a game on Steam, but have a place to like log to your wallet? Maybe Steam doesn't allow that because I haven't seen that happening with any other games. And same with Apple and Android, you're not really allowed to. I don't know. There's like limitations on like wallet transactions and DeFi programs on apps. That's why Axie Infinity is not really, or any of the metaverse games is not really on mobile. So I don't really know how that would work. Maybe it's like one mechanism, but just 2 separate apps. But that's something that we can consider later on. I feel like later on when we're more ready for it. So yeah. So in the last half an hour, we went through just like some of the like really fast-paced creative process on creating this asset. And I mentioned a lot about like just the principle of optimization. And right now we're gonna just do a more deeper dive into creating more optimized assets and how that looks in game development. So I'm gonna show this environment that I found online. Actually, I purchased this game asset, this really well created environment, and then added what I created into their world. So let me see. So okay, so now we're in Unity, and this is the world that I've been putting together. Well, like I can't really take credit because most of this terrain is from this asset that I found online, and I just bought it to support the artists and also learn how they create their stuff. Like I personally would not have that much time to like within a week I would not be able to create all of these assets by myself. No way. You know, like the amount of details into these flowers, the rocks, it's just gonna be really strenuous. But the beauty of making games is that a lot of really talented artists put their assets on the asset store. And if you like their asset, you can just buy it, and then all their assets are available to you. You can just make changes. You can learn from how they create their stuff. So, which is really cool. So I found this asset, and it took me so long to find the right asset because not only this asset is just really beautiful to look at, it's also highly optimized. Like, just think about this amount of grass. Like, look at how many grass there is, and then you can still like walk around, kind of not being super laggy. It's kind of crazy. So I was really impressed by the amount of intention and design they've put into this asset, and and I really like the style that they use right here. And I think for the village prototype, we're just gonna follow with the same kind of style where it's kind of cartoony, but also like with shading, it's kind of slightly realistic. And we're gonna really take a deep look into how they created their asset, where these grass can look kind of seamlessly interweaved into each other, where they look kind of realistic and have this dreamy feeling to it, but also super optimized. So if we click on one of these grass, we'll see that over here shows LOD, and that means level of detail. This is a very common practice that's been more and more prevalent in the recent game development, where so each asset has like different tiers of level of detail. This is actually like such a genius way in creating optimized games, where like if you get really close, you will see like on the right hand like inspector bar, it will toggle into level LOD 0. So LOD means that just like level of detail 0 means that you're like at the highest definition as you can. And so each asset will detect how far away are you from the camera. And if you're really close, it will render like in higher detail. And when you're further away, it will render in lower detail. When it's cold, it's basically like not rendering. So like if you like are standing from this angle, like it doesn't make sense for the computer to try really hard to render all these assets, right? Like you're just gonna see a green dot, and all this computing power goes into calculating that. That's like just not necessary. So level of detail is just a way to very like intelligently detect the amount of distance in order to create a fully optimized experience for your game. And so this part is really cool. And what I found is really cool is that each of these grass is not really, if you look at it, if you take it apart from the environment, let's say if I put this grass apart, put it apart, I can I isolate this grass and turn off our environment. Oh my god, it's so much. Okay. So each environment has all these crazy amount of details. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of turn this off for now and just leave this one patch of grass that we isolated. If you look at it, it looks like a really complex geometry, you know, it looks like there's a patch and there's like a lot going on. But actually, if we go into the kind of like wireframe section where we see how it's actually composed, it's just a bunch of images. Like it really is just a bunch of planes, and then each of the planes just has a really nice texture, which if you click on the object, you can look at the material that it's using. And then in the material, you can look at the texture map, and then you'll see like each of these planes just have like a really nicely drawn grass texture to it. And then on this texture, this is kind of like the alpha map of the grass, so it gives it really nice transparency. And then overlaying on alpha map, you can add like a gradient to it. So this is what we see with the gradient color, and then I think you can adjust the gradient color over here, or like, you know, you can change it to something funky or like something, you know, like more different, but we're just gonna keep it here. But what I think that this asset is doing really well is that, okay, is that like if you go into this grass and then you see the way that gradient is applied, like the bottom of the grass almost have the exact same color to the surface of the terrain. So when you look far away, it looks like very seamlessly connected to the ground, and that's just like really well designed. And so with that principle, all the new assets that we're gonna add to this world is gonna be designed in similar ways, because I can't just like drag an asset that's like super hyper realistic. It wouldn't really look good, you know. So a few example I can give. I spent some time creating this lettuce yesterday. Really proud of how it turned out. So let's say I'm gonna take this lettuce out. USDA organic, beautiful, super healthy lettuce that's gonna make your whole family really healthy and happy. And we're just gonna put it into this terrain, maybe make it slightly bigger, and see like if it looks. It doesn't look that great because the texture we're using, it's really lazy right now, because I just found a picture of a lettuce online and it literally just looks like this. I added some Photoshop filter to it, so like it doesn't, right? Like I mean, maybe from far away you can see it and be like, ooh, that's a lettuce, it's kind of cool. But when you get closer, you can see this is like, it feels like this is a trader. It doesn't really belong to this group. So there's actually a lot more work that we need to do into creating the kind of style that would be more fitting to the environment. So yeah, it's like, aside from 3D modeling and then constructing the shape, another huge part of game development is also texturing. Not game development, 3D model creation. It's like the right kind of texture that you create. So for example, if you look at these flowers, and again, if we separate it into, if we separate it into like the wireframe of the flower, oh god, you can't really see. Okay, now you see the flowers are here. And you see they are really, you know, they just have like a very simple, like kind of cylindrical shape on top. But then the texture itself adds so much more details to it. And if we go into the flowers and look at the texture map, and we can see like this is the style that this flower is painted, so that all the new we want to create that will fit into this environment. We'll probably have to adhere to the kind of same styles of, you know, these leaves and these petals and things like that. So this is how we're gonna create our assets. Like, first of all, we're not gonna create complex shapes. Like, we're not gonna bend our geometry to look like petals, but we're gonna create like big, massive planes and then have textures on top to really save our space and also make sure that it looks like the environment. So don't worry, this lettuce will get improved. We might not do it live because painting is just really time consuming and I don't think we have time to actually finish painting this lettuce today. We have around like 20 minutes, so maybe we can do some live modeling and then see how, what's the process of actually creating these assets. So I'm gonna go ahead and close Unity and Dwayne the Jock Ronson asked if I buy them at Trader Joe's. I think you can buy them at Trader Joe's. Feels like a trader. And could you modify this landscape at all? So yes, the landscape is actually fully modifiable. So actually, yeah, if we have some time, we can actually maybe spend more time modifying the landscape instead of doing the 3D model, because 3D model is fun, but it's kind of a really time-consuming process. So sorry, I just saw the comment. So based on the comment, I want to go back to the Unity screen and kind of just do a bit more of a covering on how to modify the landscape and all. And give me a second because my computer is very slow, so it's taking a while to open things. Okay, so share the screen. Okay, and now we're back at the screen. I wanted to show a bit on how modifier terrain works. So these paths didn't exist before. I paved these paths. I paved these paths so that the children of our children will be able to enjoy the space. But I paved these paths because I wanted to move these houses here, so then it would like make more sense when you have, you know, if you want to move in a house of residence, you need to give them places to walk around. So this is the house that you see creating earlier. It was all custom made with Blender. And what I'm also super proud of are these solar panels. So I've been thinking about, like, you know, like how do you make the solar panel design more artistic, even though this is not the most artistic design of solar panel. Like, you know, it could even go crazier. Maybe it could look like a pyramid or a spiral, but I do want it to be kind of realistic. Like, if you want to turn your solar panel into a pyramid, it's actually gonna be really expensive. And like, probably like if you actually want to create a eco-village, you probably don't have, like, you know, that much money to spend on like a custom pyramid solar panel. It seems like a bit overkill. So these are just like, you know, like the solar panels are standard solar panel that you can buy from China, and these are just custom frames around it to make it look kind of cohesive with the style, where we use the same like golden and red material. And this is, so as you can see, the solar panel is strategically placed on top of the mountain where it gets the most amount of sun, and also like, yeah, like you really shouldn't have it being like blocked by any plants or anything like that. So we put it up there so it's like above everything. And same with this water catcher, where this is like a looped tower, aka water catcher, with like a tower, like water storage tower underneath. But I'm thinking like this is also like placed on top of the hill, because as we saw in last session's permaculture design principle, where when you have water on a top hill, then like the water like naturally flows down. So if this house wants to use the water, like the process of that would be like to connect a pipe from here to this house, and then the whole process, you don't really need to put extra power in pumping water away, but the water will naturally flow, which is gonna be really nice. So I did also do a bit of a design of the demo map. Let me see if I can see. I'm only sharing one screen, so bear with me. Let me see if I can just have this square. Okay. So I'm gonna put this game demo map here so we can see what it looks like. But kind of like just took some time making a very brief demo of what a game looking map would be. Okay, so something like this, you know, like could be an ideal village map where all of these are like speculative, you know, there's a hill here, there's a hill here. Well, when there's a hill, maybe solar panel goes here, maybe the water line goes here. And then once you have design on where the energy source is, where the water source is, and then, you know, like maybe you need to have a space for a communal kitchen, for a communal hangout space, and you know, have a space for your sacred faith as a temple. You need to start to calculate like, okay, how much water does each of these spaces need, and then how much water can I really give, and then all of that goes into just like quantifiable data that can be simulated in a game, right? That part should be relatively straightforward. And I think ideally it would be really cool if we can have a lake, but this terrain is kind of small. We can expand it later on, but I don't know if we're gonna have time to do that with this residency. So this is just like a next step of a more complex map that we might have. And all right, going back to the editing of the terrain. So let's say like right now we have this terrain where like these mountains are high up here. There are like two sides of the mountains. And this is where things get kind of flat, where if we say like, okay, we want to have this mountains to be a bit higher, what we can do is that we can select this terrain and then go to set height, and we can just choose one of these really fun maps and then just, oh yeah, and then you need to set the target height to like higher than what you are. And then as you hold your mouse on top, you can see you're just like changing the details of this terrain, which is really, really fun, really fun. And same with here, if I want this to be like higher, I can just do these and slowly like boof up the terrain. Although because the grass, at least in this demo, the grass is like separated from the terrain, you can see from the, so if I like make it really high, it's gonna cover the grass, and then I have to like manually move all the grass, which could be a time intensive process. So I'm actually gonna make it lower. But Unity terrain also, okay, actually maybe this should be lower to begin with so you see more grass. But Unity terrain actually has like paint tree detail feature where you can actually implement like add and detail, like add a tree to this feature and then paint the tree that's attached to the terrain. So that part is really cool where like you can kind of like very, very quickly iterate the environment that you want. But I think this demo is not using that because that's not, you know, that it has a lot of limitation. Like you can't, once you paint like the grass and trees as a detail that's attached to the terrain object, you don't really have the freedom to move it around manually, which could be quite convenient for our purpose. And yeah, and another really fun part for the terrain painting, aside from setting height, is that you can also paint texture. So we have three sets of texture: dirt, grass, and cliff. And then this part, actually, it's really cool. It's actually really cool and enjoyable process to do this. So let's say over here we have some, you know, some stone, because over here it's like a naturally place where it seems like stone would like to grow. So we can like, you know, continue painting stone and then add more stone to this area if we want. Wait, so adding the opacity. And then, oh, sorry, it's not selected. So now it's selected. Now it's actually painting. So maybe like add more stone here, where like maybe over here it shouldn't have stone anymore because it's kind of like a dirt place. So you have some dirt right next to it, and then over here, as you can see, if you paint it over as dirt, then you are kind of exposing the grass. So if it has grass cover, you paint it with grass and it looks like very nice. So these are the paths that I painted with dirt, but some of them may be a bit too wide. So, oh God, what's happening here? So let me see if I can, what's going on here? How do I do my paintbrush? Okay, change my paintbrush to 2 and change it to paint texture. And yeah, and then you can do this to kind of like finesse the details of the path that you want. So right now, like if you go kind of close to this area, you can still see that, oh yeah, this is that image. It's all a lie. It's not real. But if you go really close, so maybe later on to add more details, we can really like maybe make some custom 3D models that are placed interchangeably with the painted detail of the terrain to make it more realistic, right? So, okay, paint some here and some here. Since it's a third path, it doesn't really need to be super perfect. And okay, and then now we see right now there's like, you know, all this grass that's kind of exposed, and then what we can do is copy paste some of these existing grass and then just like move it out a bit and then have it like, and maybe make it a bit taller and then have it just like here so that it feels like more like ridge. And okay, cool. And I'm curious what are the other discussion on permaculture and green sustainable method. Is there any way to pull groundwater in a sustainable way? Is this an option in your game? I think it will be. I think it really depends on the climate. So like in climates, in places where if you get a lot of annual rainfall, then it's more efficient for you to collect the rain before it falls into the ground rather than try to extract it when it's already in the ground, right? Because if it's already in the ground, the amount of effort you need to use, the pump, the design, the energy that you consume in constructing this water, it's like 10 times more than if you just built a catcher to catch the water when it falls, right? Because usually if there's a lot of moisture in the ground, that means the moisture will usually get cycled back to the sky, and then it will rain falls because the moisture kind of does this motion all the time. So yeah, so a big principle in permaculture design is like if you can use at least amount of energy possible, that's always a good. Like the less energy you use, the better, because you're making nature work for you instead of like wasting all these unnecessary energy to work for nature. So in a way, at least from the stuff I've been looking at, it's always recommended to have a giant rainwater catcher because it's the easiest ways to get a lot of water, and also you don't have to deal with filter and all that stuff. So that's why we have a rainwater catcher here. But maybe in some areas, let's say if you're in a really dry desert or in some sort of climate where like rainwater catcher is just not possible, maybe it's too windy, maybe you have limitations, maybe so it really depends on the situation. So because this demo, we only have like around a month to do this demo. So I've chosen to have like this pre-built environment. But I think will be really cool in the eventual game is that if people can kind of select the environment they want, you know, maybe we can provide 6, 7 different prototypes of different environment, from really arid desert places to really cold tundra places to like rainforest, and to, you know, just regular kind of like North America, like redwood forest. And each of the climate can have different difficulty in like building civilizations, building eco-villages. So that would be really cool. But that's not something that we probably have time to do in this session. So I know we have around 5 minutes left. Let's see, what else can we do? Okay, we have 5 minutes left. We're just gonna, I guess, stay in Unity and then just like hang out here and paint some grass before until next session, where I think the next session maybe we can do a more detailed deep dive into like, you know, creating 3D or coding and all that stuff. Where I guess since we have some time, I can do a bit of a sneak peek into like the kind of what we are gonna do in the next session. So I've been putting together like a database for plants, because there is a lot of aspects in building eco-village. There's the energy flow, there's water flow, there's, you know, plants and all that stuff. So I think what we're gonna do for this residency, just really focus on one thing at a time and really make sure that thing works before we expand too much, and then, you know, because I think it's more valuable to have one thing that's working. So I've been putting together this plant encyclopedia where we have all these different plants, and then we categorize what type of plants they are, and how deep is their root to know that like how deep can they be planted and how tall are they and how wide are they to know their relative size, and all of that can be relevant into the actual object in Unity when we put it in together as a game asset, and then we can use this to plan out what kind of plants should be right next to each other, right? If we have a lot of root vegetables, then we'll see, okay, like these root vegetables are taking a lot of space underneath, and they're in the end they're fighting space underneath because they're all roots. So maybe it's more efficient for you to plant um, potato with something like strawberry, with like, you know, where the potato root is 24 inches, where the strawberry root is only 6 inches. So maybe these two plants can be really complementary, where like, you know, the potato takes the deeper roots, strawberry takes the upper roots, and then maybe you plant some other like herbs in between, have some mushroom in between to add like biodiversity to it. So these are what I aim to achieve. It's still really ambitious, but we can like put all these together into actual game assets, and then create a simple interactions of like player walking around the environment, actually planting them into the scene. So yeah, that's the goal. We'll see how well that works. And I know we have around 2 minutes left, and I know we have another session right after this, so I think we can end it right here to give you guys some time to rest and prepare. And yeah, so but thank you for everyone for tuning into today's live stream. I hope the technical demonstration is not too boring. But in the future, in the next 2-3 sessions, we'll continue to do the technical deep dive into creating the virtual prototype of Eco Village, and see how far we can go and with this residency. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and I think we can stop the recording now.
Okay, well, hello there. It's the fourth session. I had a lot of technical difficulties before this session. I will have to do this one on my old computer, which works kind of slower than the one I'm used to. But I wanted to show you all my. Today will be more about my music side and the music that I make for my audiovisual pieces. And I used to make music on this computer because I have like all my plugins and all my stuff and all my samples and audio files here in this computer. Um, and the other one that I have is kind of old, so I didn't make all the file passage. So well, I'll have to make it here. Thought I was gonna be able to pass it to the new one, but I wasn't able. So you'll have to bear with me on the slow parts where this computer may get. But we might get started. I will show you before we start doing like the scoring the music for a piece that I showed a lot of times already. I will first show you the other ones that I already have that are from the YH4 collection. I will first show you the piece, and then I'll go to the project and show you each stem, so you can see how the whole music piece is composed by each part.